This is something else. Jonah Hill. Real change in film will come when women, minorities run studios and streaming companies. Oh, Jonah. I lost all respect for you. Well, I didn't have any respect for you to begin with, but look at this soy boy. Ugh. Actor and director Jonah Hill recently joined sports giant Adidas for its Superstar 2020 campaign and said real change in Hollywood happened when white men relinquished their power. Hill, who recently directed an Adidas shoe commercial, is celebrated on Adidas website as a game changer in the film industry. Yeah, game changing soy. Speaking of that change, Hill told Adidas he thinks that Hollywood is changing. He claimed that people who weren't empowered to tell stories are getting that opportunity to tell a story. Oh my God.
Sorry, Charlie.
This is what happens when you consume a metric ton of soy. That's what happens. But the 21 Jump Street star also does not feel that change is happening fast enough. And Jonah Hill has a solution to the problem. Kill all white men. Rid the industry of white men. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Well, then that means you have to go too. Dillhole. Real change, Hill told Adidas, is going to happen when everyone running the studios and running all these streaming companies are women and people who haven't had a voice that white men have gotten throughout that time. Jesus Christ. The first commercial Hill directed for the company insists that the superstar stands for all who aren't afraid for standing up for something. But if you're white, you can't stand up for something? Is that it? Probably. For those who know change can't happen alone and believe it takes a team to make a difference in the world, the company added. Oh God, do I have something to say about this? But with all that, I just find it funny that Jonah Hill talks about that, but yet you don't see him giving all his money away and his power, his perceived power in Hollywood, if you will, to people less fortunate. He just talks about, well, other people should do it, but he doesn't necessarily say he's going to do it, right? He says other people should do it, but not me. It's sort of like, do as I say, not as I do. Rules for me, rules for thee. That's how these Hollywood nitwits think. They live in a bubble, obviously, and they don't associate themselves with people like you and I. Now, they want to put butts in the seats in theaters, so why do they come out and say this ridiculous? Yoink. They know for a fact that if they don't say this ridiculous, yoink, they won't get acting gigs, producing gigs, directing gigs. That's just how it goes. Is there some sort of cabal out there telling them they have to act this way or they won't get acting, jobs? I wouldn't doubt it, but I've got no proof of that, obviously, other than the fact that they say this ridiculous yoink, and they keep on keeping on. But like I said, Jonah Hill is not necessarily the only problem. You got people like Michael Moore. Yeah, this lovely gentleman. One of his tweets a long time ago, he basically says, white people, period. Michael Moore, this lovely gentleman, says this in a tweet a while ago. He says, white people, period. Nobody likes giving up power, period. And they never see the writing on the wall, period. The new day arrives and no one has the heart to tell them their old, tired, privileged ways are over, period. But you're white. This is just the interesting fact that this guy can say all this ridiculous crap and sort of get away with it. Again, he's got a lot of money. He lives a privileged life, but do you see him giving up his money and his privilege and his power? No, he won't. Why? Because he's a freaking hypocrite. But you see, the fun doesn't stop right there. David Schwimmer, another white guy, obviously, he went out and said some stupid things. Now, he's going to come back and say, well, I was taken out of context because it was an interview, but whatever. So, let's just read this article from CNN. It says, David Schwimmer, living single fans would like a word. We are sure David Schwimmer meant well. Notice how they always assume the well-intentioned of a liberal, but never assume the well-intentioned of someone who's not a liberal. Imagine that. Interview with The Guardian. The actor talked about, very aware of my privilege, here we go again, as a heterosexual white male. And there it is again. He also discussed his hit NBC series, Friends, existing in a pre-woke time. There we go. The woke. Before there was as much attention to inclusive storytelling as there is now. Really? You think there was no inclusive storytelling back in the 80s and 90s? Disagree with you on there. But we live in a society where we ignore the past, essentially, and try to overcorrect the future. He states, maybe there should be an all-black Friends or all-Asian Friends, said Schwimmer, who played Ross for 10 seasons. So, fresh off the boat doesn't count? Living Single doesn't count, which we'll get to in a second? The Jeffersons, Sanford and Son, etc., all these particularly black shows in the 70s and 80s, we're just going to ignore them that they happened? But I was well aware of the lack of diversity and campaigned for years who have Ross date women of color. Oh, so we have to force his character to date a woman of color to push a narrative. That's always good storytelling, pushing narratives. One of the first girlfriends I had on the show was an Asian American woman. And I later dated an African American woman. Okay? That was a very conscious push on my part. Except there was all-black version of Friends that predated Schwimmer's by a year. The Fox comedy Living Single aired from 93 to 98, and like Friends, focused on 6 young adults and intertwined lives in New York City. Always New York City or Chicago. Ugh, terrible. Living Single was created by Yvette Lee Browser and starred Queen Latifah, Kim Fields, Erica Alexandra, Kim Coles, John Henton, and T.C. Carson. The internet was quick, obviously, to remind Schwimmer about the series, with Alexander, who starred as attorney Maxine Shaw, weighing in. So they kind of go back and forth to tweeting like, hey, David Schwimmer, you're a moron. Stop being, woke and trying to push this white, power and privilege narrative that you have to give up power, but you're not going to give up power because why would you do that? You're only saying other people to do that. See, apparently Schwimmer has no idea he was on a white reboot of Living Single, writer Michael Harriot tweeted. Wednesday, Schwimmer tweeted a response. Some of the criticism, as usually there is. A lot of times I think these Hollywood nitwits, they like to create criticism to get their name in the spotlight, regardless if it's good or bad. Obviously, you don't want it bad, but even if it's somewhat middle of the road, which this is, that's what he wants, because he's probably trying to push some sort of project he's doing. Says, not to belabor the point with this one, he says, I didn't mean to imply Living Single hadn't existed, or indeed hadn't come before Friends. Here goes his soft shoe tap dance, which I knew it had. Schwimmer tweeted in a statement, please remember in an interview quotes are often pieced together, blah, 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 and taken out of context, and then these quotes are often repurposed in other articles by other people who are trying to be provocative. No, you're just an idiot, Dave. He also said he was a fan of Living Single and was not implying Friends was the first of its kind. You see, this is just when you try to go woke and then someone else tries to outwoke you, then you try to outwoke them, and then you just create this snowballing crap rolling down the hill. People are just trying to make the snowball of woke bigger and bigger and bigger. And obviously we're seeing a pushback here, thankfully. But to end this, it's just this whole woke culture, this white privilege, this perceived white privilege that other white people have, but refuse to give up that perceived power they talk about because they want you to do it. But But you got to ask yourself, how do you do that? How do you give up perceived power? I don't know I have power, so I'm supposed to give up power? What power? I don't have any power. I'm just some dude on the internet. It's just one of those things where these white, liberal, progressive nitwits in Hollywood, in academia, are trying to push this narrative that all white people have this scary power and privilege locked away, and we're holding it on for dear life because we don't want anyone else to have it. It's like these nitwits in Hollywood have money and have the power. You can't have one without the other. For instance, how many kings and queens that run a country don't have any money and have all the power? It just doesn't happen. Look at San Francisco and all the homeless. They don't have any power. Perceived wokeness and white privilege and this privilege that creates power that we perceivably have as Caucasians in the United States, it's complete bullcrap. It's made up. It's also made up to show that these white progressive liberals are woke so they can accumulate these perceived woke points. David Schwimmer, Michael Moore, Jonah Hill, you guys are idiots. And if you want to give up power, do it.
Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow. So just Do it! Make your dreams come true!
But until you give up all your money and start living on the streets or in the back of a van down by the river, I don't want to hear another word from you.